this is your spoiler warning. This is all you're gonna get. Things will be spoiled. You have been warned. If you haven't watched either cut of the Justice League, the basic story is this. Superman is dead, and now Batman is assembling a team to face potential future threats to planet Earth. And a threat arrives in the form of Steppenwolf, who is there to collect 3 artifacts known as the Mother Boxes, which he intends to use to destroy Earth. Well, that's kind of a lie. His motivations shift from cut to cut. Let's take a trip on back down memory lane to 2017. Now, up to this point, I had not had great experience with the Zack Snyder DC movies. And I'll admit, for all of the narrative structural problems that those films had, a lot of my disliking of them came down to personal taste. I just really didn't like the nihilistic tone that Zack Snyder was going for. So when I heard that Joss Whedon, the director of The Avengers, was stepping in to help out with Justice League, I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of excited. But when I left the theater after seeing the finished product, all I could think was, how did this happen? How did so many people look at this and go, yes, this is what we're doing. This is good. Now, over the past 4 years that this film has been out, there have been plenty of videos tearing it apart, which you can find pretty much anywhere on this fine website. So I won't dwell too long on what all went wrong here. The best way I can summarize it is that every time the film got close to making sense, the script took a hard left and drove as far away as possible. For example, according to Batman, Wonder Woman walked away from humanity 100 years ago. That's an interesting start to a character arc, and it tracks with what happened in the first Wonder Woman movie. Maybe after seeing how evil humanity can be, Diana decided that humanity isn't worth saving. I wonder what's going to happen to convince her otherwise. Oh wait, she actually did save a bunch of people, like 10 minutes ago. Did anybody read the script? Or wait, how about this? Here's Cyborg. I wonder how he's gonna get involved with the Justice League. Oh, he's just scrolling through Facebook and he sees a picture of Bruce Wayne and then a picture of Batman. And then he decides he wants to be in the Justice League. Okay, well, how about Aquaman? At first, he doesn't really want to get involved. He thinks that Bruce Wayne's crazy. And then he gets some green blood on his fingers and then lackadaisically swims back to Atlantis just in time to see Steppenwolf steal the MacGuffin number 2. And then Amber Heard tells him to do better. Okay. And speaking of Steppenwolf, does he have like an Oedipus complex or something?
I know, Mother. You've waited too long for the Unity. I know, but you will feed.
Maybe you're starting to get the idea. The film was just really choppy and barely makes any sense. The cutting feels like they're editing around stuff that they don't have rather than editing where they want to. And I think that for me, the movie really fell apart about halfway through when out of nowhere Bruce Wayne says, hey, let's resurrect Superman.
The Mother Box was designed to reshape a planet.
What if you were stronger than a planet? Your cells lying dormant, but incapable of decay.
Could bring him back to life.
Sure, lots of people are sad that he's gone, and it's very clear that the film is trying to say that the world has lost hope ever since Superman died. And therefore, bringing Superman back would help restore hope to the world. But the way that the idea of resurrecting Superman from the grave is introduced into the film is so sudden and abrupt that it gave me whiplash. I was just like, okay, I guess this is what we're doing now. And this is how most plot points are introduced in the theatrical cut. Things just kind of happen without any rhyme or reason, and you're not really sure why, but you do get the vague sense that it's building towards a big, predictable, climactic fight scene. It's kind of like being led around town by your drunken friend. You have no idea where they're trying to take you, and chances are neither do they, but you have a pretty good idea of where they're going to end up. So when I sat down to watch Zack Snyder's 4-hour cut of this mess, I really did not know what to expect. But I was already happy for one thing, and that was that a big studio allowed a director to complete their vision. If you're not familiar with how Hollywood works, then just know that this is pretty incredible what Zack Snyder was able to do. I guess the best way that I can describe my viewing experience is that every 5 minutes I just went, oh, that's what was supposed to be happening. That makes sense now. Okay, I get. Well, we can move on now. Can we get on with the movie? I understand, Zach. I get it. Obviously, the extended runtime was going to allow for better character and plot development, and that's exactly what we get. However, we get a little too much in my opinion. Don't get me wrong, a lot of this was sorely missing from the theatrical cut. But especially in the first half of the Snyder Cut, a lot of the added scenes either don't make sense or kill the pacing. Case in point, when the Amazonians fire the flaming arrow to warn Diana of the coming invasion, in the theatrical cut, they light the arrow, fire it, and it ignites the warning pyre. Simple, streamlined, moves the story right along. Now there's a big long ritual where Amazonians carry up the Ark of the Covenant, which holds the flaming arrow, and they say a prayer and chant over said arrow, before slowly lighting it on fire and letting it fly. Then we are treated to a solid 20 seconds of the arrow flying over the ocean. Now allegedly Diana knows what this means.
Men won't know what it means. Men won't. She will.
The fire could be seen for miles on end.
But in the Snyder Cut, when Diana sees the warning pyre on national news, she takes a flight out to the warning pyre and finds a secret crypt beneath, which tells the story of Darkseid and the Mother Boxes. Not only does this show that Diana clearly did not know what the fire meant, but it's also a scene that could have been cut entirely. Because with all the stories that she was told as a kid about Zeus and the gods, I would have no problem believing that she knew the story of why there was an entire legion of Amazonians standing guard around a box. Okay, how about Cyborg? Cyborg was really gypped by the theatrical cut. So how is he handled here? Well, he gets a full backstory, explaining where he came from, how he came to be, why he seems to have such a grudge against his father, and actual legitimate motivation for joining the Justice League. It was beautiful and heartfelt, and I really enjoyed it. And by the end, I was totally invested in Cyborg as a character. The problem is that by the time we cut back to the other characters, I forgot I was watching Justice League. I was ready to watch the rest of a Cyborg origin movie. Or how about we take a look at the villain of the film, Steppenwolf. Actually, he's not the only villain anymore, which does great things for his character motivation. I also love Steppenwolf's redesign. Not only is his constantly shifting armor really neat to look at, but he moves with such physicality that I really felt the weight and threat of this character in a way that I just didn't in the theatrical cut. As a side note, I don't really read a whole lot of comics, so I had no clue who Steppenwolf was. So I looked up what he looks like in the comics, and he's just like a guy in armor. And I have to say, I'm glad that they went with this more monstrous take on the character. I don't know. That's just a personal preference. However, there are times where he'll repeat the same information twice to his superiors, and it starts to come across as if Zack Snyder does not trust the audience to remember what's going on.
The other two still sleep, but the parademons feel their presence.
Where is the third Mother Box?
The parademons sense its presence and search for the third.
And to be fair, his movie is 4 hours long. But when you have characters literally repeating the exact same information, maybe it's time to take a look back at your script and go, maybe something could be trimmed out so I don't have to repeat this. And I think that's my main issue with the Snyder Cut. I feel like there's a good movie buried in here somewhere. And instead of getting a strong theatrical cut first, we got a Frankenstein's monster back in 2017 built by committee that only barely retained the same basic story. And then 4 years later, we got a director's cut that, for all intents and purposes, had a completely different story, and Zack Snyder showed us every single shot that he ever filmed. And I will say, the passion shows. The cuts are very deliberate and planned. They don't feel like they're frantically trying to cover up something. It's very obvious that Zack poured his heart and soul into this project. And that was probably the thing that I enjoyed the most. Feeling that the filmmaker was showing me something that he was truly passionate about. To me, that passion was infectious. So even with all of the gripes that I had about the runtime, or the plot holes, or the messy dialogue, or the character arcs and motivations that seemed to shift and break on a dime, I couldn't help but sit there and enjoy watching this man's vision come to life. And if you're at all familiar with the film's troubled production and why Zack Snyder had to step away in the first place, then you might understand why the dedication at the end of the film nearly brought me to tears. Yeah, some of the scenes with Aquaman are just Old Spice commercials. And yeah, Lois Lane really doesn't do much except interrupt the pacing, with scenes of her just missing Superman. And I know that they had to introduce Martian Manhunter, but because they did it in the middle of the film, it was really confusing because I had no idea who that was. I also don't know why it had to be Martian Manhunter and it couldn't have just been Martha! For real, checking in on Lois. But overall, I think it's a decent film with some really cool moments. And it's certainly an improvement over the 2017 theatrical cut. Now, if only we could get a theatrical cut of this version. I wasn't going to talk about this, but I feel like I really need to get this off my chest. The music selections are kind of all over the place, and a lot of them don't really make much sense. And the original score that replaced Danny Elfman's soundtrack feels kind of generic. And part of that's due to the lack of a strong leitmotif. I'm a big film soundtrack nerd, and the fact that there wasn't a Justice League leitmotif really grinded my gears. A leitmotif is a basic melody or theme that composers will do variations on throughout a film score to call back to certain things or events or people or ideas. Like the Avengers, it's used throughout the entire franchise from the moment it's introduced in the first Avengers movie. There really isn't anything like that for the Justice League as a group. Individual characters have some leitmotifs, but in the DC films, most of the leitmotifs don't feel like logically complete musical statements. They feel like your friend who knows the words to the chorus, and then when the verses come up, they just kind of mumble their way through the song. Like, here's Wonder Woman. Anyway, that's just a weird little nitpick. I didn't know where to logically fit into the rest of the video, so I put it here in this epilogue. You know, just like the nightmare sequence and Martian Manhunter introducing himself to Bruce Wayne. I'm having a really hard time giving the Snyder Cut a numerical rating. Because on the one hand, I want to rate it on how it is as a film on its own. However, I'm subconsciously thinking about how much it improved on the theatrical cut. So with all that in mind, I'm gonna say that it's a solid 7 out of 10. 7? Yeah, 7 sounds right.